My name is Sarah and I just turned 18. I should have been celebrating my birthday with cake and presents, surrounded by family who loved me. But instead I was standing on the front porch of my childhood home with 2 garbage bags containing everything I owned, watching my mother close the door in my face. Something inside me finally broke after years of being pushed aside, ignored, and treated like an unwanted guest in my own home. I want to share this story because I know there are others out there who feel invisible in their own families, who've been made to feel like they don't matter. If that's you, please know you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories like this one, because sometimes we need to know we're not the only ones fighting these battles. For 18 years, I believed that family meant unconditional love. I believed that no matter what happened, my mother would always choose me, always protect me, always put me first. I was wrong, dead wrong. And the day I learned that lesson was the day everything changed forever. My story isn't unique, but it's mine. It's about what happens when the person who's supposed to love you most chooses someone else instead. It's about survival, about finding strength you never knew you had, and about learning that sometimes the family you're born with isn't the one that will save you. I grew up thinking I was lucky. Single mom, just the 2 of us against the world. She worked double shifts at the diner to keep us afloat, and I admired her strength, her determination. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town, nothing fancy, but it was ours. We had movie nights every Friday, shared inside jokes, and she always made sure I had what I needed for school. But when I turned 15, everything changed. That's when Derek came into our lives. He was charming at first, the way toxic people always are. He brought flowers, complimented my mother's cooking, even asked about my grades. I thought maybe this was good for her, that she deserved someone who would treat her well after years of being alone. My father left when I was 3, so I don't remember much about him. It was always just Mom and me, and honestly, I thought we were better off without him. She never talked about him much, except to say he wasn't ready for the responsibility of a family. I used to imagine he was out there somewhere, maybe thinking about us, maybe regretting his choice. Now I wonder if he saw something in my mother that I was too young to recognize. Our apartment was small but cozy. My room was barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser, but I had painted the walls purple and covered them with posters of my favorite bands. The living room doubled as my mother's office space where she paid bills and planned our weekly grocery trips. We didn't have much money, but we had routines, traditions, a sense of stability that I thought would last forever. My mother, Linda, was 34 when Derek entered our lives. She was beautiful in that tired, worn-down way that single mothers often are. She had given up her dreams of becoming a nurse to raise me, working instead at Joe's Diner downtown, pulling double shifts on weekends to make ends meet. She never complained, never made me feel like a burden, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. We had our problems like any family. She was strict about grades, curfew, chores. I was a typical teenager who thought she was being unreasonable. But we talked through our disagreements, and there was never any doubt that we loved each other. She used to tell me I was her whole world, that everything she did was for me, to give me a better life than she'd had. Derek was different from the few men my mother had dated before. He was confident, had a steady job in construction, and most importantly, he seemed genuinely interested in both of us. At first, anyway. He would take us out to dinner, bring me small gifts, ask about my plans for college. My mother lit up around him in a way I hadn't seen in years. The changes started small. Derek would come over more frequently, staying later, sometimes sleeping on the couch. Then he started keeping clothes in my mother's room. Before I knew it, he was essentially living with us, though he kept his own apartment across town. My mother asked me how I felt about him moving in officially, and I said I was fine with it. I wanted her to be happy. But as Derek became more comfortable, his true personality began to emerge. He was controlling in subtle ways at first. He didn't like my mother's friends, thought they were a bad influence. He convinced her to skip her weekly coffee with her sister because he wanted to spend time with just her. He started commenting on her appearance, suggesting she wear different clothes, do her hair differently. I watched my confident, independent mother slowly shrink into someone I barely recognized. She started asking Derek's opinion on everything from what to cook for dinner to whether she should pick up extra shifts at work. She stopped calling her sister back, stopped making plans with her friends, stopped being the strong woman who had raised me. The warning signs were there, but I was 16 and more concerned with my own problems than my mother's relationship. I told myself she was just happy to have someone, that maybe this was what love looked like for adults. I ignored the way Derek's eyes would narrow when I interrupted their conversations, the way he would change the subject when I talked about my future plans, the way my mother's laugh became more forced and less genuine. The first real incident happened 6 months after Derek moved in. I had been accepted to the state university with a partial scholarship, and I was excited to share the news. I burst into the apartment after school, waving the acceptance letter, practically bouncing with excitement. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner, and Derek was sitting at our small table, beer in hand. "Mom, you're not going to believe this." I started, but Derek cut me off immediately. "Keep it down, Sarah. Some of us had a long day at work." My mother looked between us nervously. "What's going on, honey?" I showed her the letter, watching her face light up with pride. But before she could respond, Derek spoke again. "College is expensive, Linda. We can't afford to be throwing money away on dreams that might not pan out." The room went quiet. My mother's smile faded, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This was my moment, my achievement, and Derek was already trying to tear it down. "It's a partial scholarship," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I can work part-time, get student loans for the rest." Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Student loans that your mother will have to co-sign for. Debt that will follow this family for years. You need to think about what's realistic here." My mother said nothing. She just stood there, holding my acceptance letter, looking between Derek and me like she was trying to solve an impossible equation. The second incident happened a month later. I had been dating a boy from school, Jake, for about 3 months. He was my first real boyfriend, and I was head over heels in that way only 17-year-olds can be. I had invited him over for dinner, wanting my mother to meet him properly. Derek made the entire evening uncomfortable. He interrogated Jake about his plans after graduation, made snide comments about his clothes, and generally acted like Jake was some kind of threat. After Jake left, Derek turned to my mother. "I don't like him. He's not right for Sarah." "Derek, he seems like a nice boy," my mother ventured. "Nice boys don't get girls pregnant and ruin their lives," Derek shot back. "Sarah's too young to be getting serious with anyone. She should be focusing on more practical things." I stood up from the table, my hands shaking with anger. "You don't get to decide who I date. You're not my father." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's face went dark, and when he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "As long as you're living under this roof, eating food that I help pay for, I absolutely do get a say in what happens in this house." My mother said nothing. Again, the third incident was the worst. It was my 18th birthday, and I had planned a small party with a few friends from school. My mother had agreed to it weeks earlier, even helped me plan the menu. But when Derek came home from work that day, he was in a foul mood. "I'm not spending my evening listening to a bunch of teenagers," he announced. "Cancel it." "Derek, it's her birthday," my mother said quietly. "I don't care what day it is. This is my house too, and I don't want those kids here." "But everyone's already on their way," I protested. "We planned this weeks ago." Derek stepped closer to me, his face inches from mine. "Then you should have asked me first." My mother was crying now, torn between disappointing me and angering Derek. I realized in that moment that she had already made her choice. She was going to choose him, like she had been choosing him over and over again for the past year. "Fine," I said, my voice shaking. "I'll call everyone and cancel. But this isn't over." Derek smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "Oh, I think it is." The final confrontation happened 3 days after my birthday. I had been thinking about everything that had happened over the past year, about how small my world had become, how my mother had changed, how Derek had slowly taken over our lives. I made a decision that would change everything. I was in my room when I heard Derek and my mother talking in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but I could make out enough to understand they were talking about me. I crept closer to listen. "She's 18 now, Linda. She's an adult. It's time for her to start acting like one." "What do you mean?" my mother asked. "I mean she needs to get a job, start paying rent, or find her own place. I'm tired of supporting someone else's kid." My blood ran cold. Someone else's kid. That's how he saw me. "Derek, she's still in school. She's my daughter." "She's not my daughter. And frankly, I'm tired of pretending she is. You have to choose, Linda. It's either her or me." I didn't wait to hear my mother's response. I walked into the kitchen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "You don't have to choose, Mom," I said, looking directly at Derek. "I'll make it easy for you." Derek turned around, surprised. "What did you say?" "I said I'll make it easy for you. You want me gone? Fine. But let's be clear about what's happening here. You're asking my mother to choose between her child and her boyfriend. And Mom, you're actually considering it. My mother's face went pale. Sarah, that's exactly what this is, I interrupted. For the past year, I've watched you let this man control every aspect of our lives. I've watched you become someone I don't recognize. I've watched you choose him over me again and again. Derek stepped forward, his face red with anger. You ungrateful little... No, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm not ungrateful. I'm done. I'm done being treated like a burden in my own home. I'm done watching my mother disappear into someone else's idea of who she should be. I'm done pretending this is normal. That night, I packed everything I owned into 2 garbage bags. It wasn't much, just clothes, some books, a few personal items that meant something to me. My mother sat on my bed, crying, begging me to reconsider. Sarah, please. We can work this out. Derek didn't mean what he said. Yes, he did, Mom. And the fact that you're still defending him tells me everything I need to know. Where will you go? You don't have anywhere to go. I'll figure it out. I have to. The next morning, Derek was in the kitchen drinking coffee when I came out with my bags. He looked up at me with what I can only describe as satisfaction. So you're really doing this? Running away like a child? I'm not running away. I'm leaving. There's a difference. My mother appeared in the doorway, her eyes red from crying. Sarah, please don't do this. I looked at her, this woman who had raised me, who had been my whole world for 18 years, and I felt something break inside me. You did this, Mom. You made this choice. You chose him over me every single time it mattered. Derek stood up, his chest puffed out like he was about to deliver the final blow. Good. Maybe now you'll learn what it's like in the real world. Maybe you'll learn to survive on your own. My mother nodded, actually nodded, and said the words that would haunt me for years to come. You need to learn to survive on your own. I walked out of that apartment and didn't look back. The first few weeks were the hardest of my life. I stayed with my friend Jessica's family, sleeping on their couch, trying to figure out what to do next. Jessica's mom, Mrs. Rodriguez, was kind but firm about it being a temporary solution. I got a job at a grocery store, working as many hours as they would give me, saving every penny. I deferred my college acceptance for a year, something that broke my heart, but felt necessary for survival. I found a tiny studio apartment across town, barely big enough for a bed and a hot plate, but it was mine. I learned to budget, to cook for myself, to handle my own laundry and bills, and all the mundane tasks of adult life that my mother had always taken care of. The hardest part wasn't the practical stuff, though. It was the loneliness. I had always had my mother to talk to share my day with, to ask for advice. Now I had to figure everything out on my own, and some days the weight of that responsibility felt crushing. I started seeing a counselor at the community center, a woman named Dr. Martinez who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand that what had happened wasn't my fault, that I had been right to set boundaries, that my mother's choices said more about her than they did about me. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I made new friends at work, started taking night classes at the community college, began to see a future for myself that didn't depend on anyone else's approval or support. I learned that I was stronger than I had ever imagined, that I could take care of myself, that I could create my own definition of family. My mother called a few times in those first months, but the conversations were always the same. She would cry, say she missed me, but never once did she acknowledge what had really happened. She never said Derek was wrong, never said she was sorry for choosing him over me. She just wanted me to come back and pretend everything was normal. After a year, Derek left her. Just like that, he was gone, moved in with another woman across town. My mother was devastated, called me sobbing, begging me to come home. But by then, I had learned an important lesson. Home isn't a place you go back to, it's a place you create for yourself. It's been 3 years since that night. I'm 21 now, a junior in college, studying social work because I want to help other kids who find themselves in impossible situations. I have my own apartment, a job I love, friends who support me, and a sense of self that no one can take away from me. My mother and I have a relationship now, but it's different. We talk once a week, meet for coffee occasionally, but there are boundaries that didn't exist before. She's learned that I'm not the same person who left with those garbage bags, and I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. The most important thing I've learned is that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice. It's about the people who show up for you when it matters, who support your dreams instead of tearing them down, who choose you back when you choose them. If you're in a situation like mine, where you feel invisible in your own family, where you're being asked to make yourself smaller to make someone else comfortable, please know that you have choices. You have worth. You have the right to be treated with respect and love, and if the people who are supposed to love you can't do that, then you have the right to walk away. It won't be easy. Some days it will feel impossible. But you are stronger than you know, and you deserve better than a life spent begging for scraps of love from people who should be giving it freely. Survival isn't just about getting by. It's about building a life that reflects your values, your dreams, your worth. It's about learning that sometimes the family you're born with isn't the one that will save you. But that doesn't mean you're destined to be alone. You can create your own family, your own home, your own definition of love. And that, more than anything else, is what it truly means to survive.